Thank you for choosing American Pest CEUs. Hi, I'm Sean Reeves. I'm an Associate Certified Entomologist with American Pest CEUs. I've been in the pest management industry since 1999, and I'll be your instructor for today's course. Today's course was compiled by Jack Launius, who has served in the pest management industry since 1990. Today's course will be on carpenter ants of Alaska. When we think about carpenter ants, it's important to know that nesting sites may be located in live and dead trees, sometimes resulting in damage to shade trees. Nests may also be established in walls and support beams of structures, or in voids within doors, walls, and furniture. Preference for moist or decaying wood is their preference, but nesting sites are not restricted to such areas. Carpenter ant populations develop relatively slowly, with colonies of 300 to 2,000 workers being produced over a 2-year or longer period for various species, and mature colonies reaching upwards of 10,000 individuals. Worker movement occurs between the main colony and the satellites, which serve as areas for further brood development and colony expansion. Shredded fragments of wood, similar in appearance to coarse sawdust, are ejected from the galleries through pre-existing cracks or slits made by the ants. When such accumulations are found, typically containing dead ants and bits of insects which the carpenter ants have eaten, it's a good indication that a carpenter ant nest is nearby. Oftentimes, however, the excavated sawdust remains hidden behind a wall or in some other concealed area. Carpenter ants may establish nests in a number of different locations. It is important to realize that these locations can be either inside or outside of the structure. Carpenter ants actually construct 2 different kinds of nest: parent colonies, which, when mature, contain an egg-laying queen, brood, and 2,000 or more worker ants, and satellite colonies, which may have large numbers of worker ants, but no queen, eggs, or young larvae. The carpenter ants inside a home may have originated from the parent colony or from one or more satellite nests. For example, the ants may be coming from the parent nest located outdoors in a tree stump, landscape timber, or woodpile, or from one or more satellite nests hidden behind a wall in the kitchen or bathroom, or perhaps from wood dampened by a roof leak in the attic. The extent and potential damage to a home depends on how many nests are actually present within the structure and how long the infestation has been active. Carpenter ants, Camponotus, SPP, Hymenoptera, Firmicidae, are among the largest members of the ant family in the United States. Under natural conditions, nests can be found in rotting logs, stumps, or occasionally in damp heartwood of live trees. I have to say that I found carpenter ants in all these areas, but the heartwood and live trees, like those damp areas, has always been very interesting to me. When I was growing up, my dad owned a business cutting trees, and I can't tell you how many times we'd cut through the trunk of trees and see carpenter ants nesting in that damp heartwood of live trees. So we said it was occasionally here. It does happen quite often when you really think about it, and it's very interesting to see and how they can damage the inside of a tree so much and even weaken the tree itself. However, they may also construct their nest in house timbers or other man-made structures where wood becomes moist. Occasionally, they are found tunneling into styrofoam insulation. Well-established ant colonies may cause structural damage in homes, resulting in the need for extensive repairs. Carpenter ants are also a nuisance when invading homes, crawling over kitchen surfaces and getting into food. Camponotus, SPP, are not known to occur in southeast Alaska. However, ants in the genus Lasius behave similarly to carpenter ants and are found throughout Alaska. Carpenter ants may be active indoors during spring and summer while foraging for their favored foods, including sweet or fatty fare such as syrup or honey. If these are not available, the ants will feed on dead or living insects or other types of organic material. If more than 20 ants are found in a home, especially in the winter months, the infestation is most likely within the home and needs to be treated. Let's talk about carpenter ants, description, and life history. A mature carpenter ant colony usually releases reproductive individuals in springtime. The reproductives have wings and, like winged termites, are commonly known as swarmers. The swarmer's purpose is to mate and, in the case of females, to fly out to a new location, lay eggs, and establish a new colony. In winter, most carpenter ant colonies become dormant, although indoor nests may show some continued activity. Carpenter ant nests consist of smooth, clean tunnels and excavations in wood that run with or against the grain. In contrast, subterranean termite tunnels are lined with a mud-like material and always run in the same direction as the wood's grain. A carpenter ant colony is often composed of a series of nests. The main nest, or parent nest, is usually located outdoors, often in wood piles, logs, stumps, or trees, sometimes several feet above the ground. The nest contains the queen, some workers, larvae, and pupa. It may be joined by subnest or satellite nest containing workers and older larvae and pupa. Parent nest where the queen lays eggs. Larvae, hatched from the eggs, are cared for and later may be transported to satellite nest. There, the larvae will undergo pupation and complete their metamorphosis to become adult workers. And as you can see in the photo, you're seeing all the stages here. You're seeing left to right the egg, the larva, the pupal, and the adult stage. It is the satellite nest that is most often encountered in structures. A satellite nest is often established in an area where wood has become moist. Common sites include wood around leaking chimney flashing, attics, skylights, bathtubs, windowsills, door frames, porch supports, columns, soffits, wood siding and shingles, and flat roofs. Carpenter ants will also nest in fiberglass and foam insulation. And as you can see, everything we're talking about here is areas where moisture can get to wood. That doesn't mean you won't find carpenter ants in areas that haven't gotten moist. We're just saying that typically that's where you are going to find them. Now, the other thing that I think is important here to know is that the carpenter ants will also nest in fiberglass and foam insulation. And foam insulation was very interesting to me when I first started out in pest control back in the late 90s. I actually heard carpenter ants chewing into foam insulation that was up in a sill plate in the basement. I got on a ladder and looked up and pulled back some of the foam insulation, and they were chewing right into it, I'm assuming hollowing it out and making a gallery for their nest. Carpenter ants are social insects and live in colonies made up of 3 castes. 1. Swarmers, winged females, up to 3/4 inch long, and much smaller winged males. 2. A wingless queen, which never leaves the nest and spends her entire life laying eggs. And 3. Workers, of which they are major workers, about 1/2 inch long, that guard the colony and forage for food, and minor workers, 1/4 inch long, that care for the queen, eggs, and developing larvae. Queens are generally black, while workers will either have some red or brown on their legs or body. Carpenter ants have a smoothly rounded, arch shape to the top of the thorax, elbowed antenna, and constricted waist with a single node between the thorax and abdomen. Workers have a large head and small thorax, while swarmers have a smaller head and a larger thorax to accommodate flight muscles. Swarmer wings are long, with the forewing longer than the hind wing, clear or brownish with prominent veins. Swarmers emerge from mature colonies usually in May and June. Males die after mating, but newly fertilized females, which are mated for life, either re-establish an old colony or establish a new satellite colony in a small cavity in logs or stumps or in deteriorating moist wood. The new queen loses her wings and lays 15 to 20 eggs over the next 15 days. Eggs are about 1/8 inch long, oval, and cream colored. Eggs hatch after 24 days and the larvae emerge. Larvae are legless and grub-like, with their size varying according to their ultimate adult form, i.e. swarmer, worker, etc. Larvae pupate and tough, tan-colored, silken coons, often erroneously referred to as ant eggs. The larval stage is usually completed in 21 days, and the pupal stage completed 21 days later. However, cold winter weather may delay the life cycle. All eggs produced in the first 3 years become sterile female workers. These workers assume the duties of collecting food, feeding the queen, excavating galleries to enlarge the nest, and tending the eggs, larvae, and pupa of the next generation. Workers are able to forage for food up to 200 yards from the nest, and although they do not sting, their bite can be painful. Colonies mature and begin to produce swarmers in 3 to 6 years. Let's talk about the basics of carpenter ants. The first character you need to look at in identifying ants is the thin waist between the thorax and the abdomen. This short area is called the petiole, and it actually is part of the abdomen. All ants have either a single raised area on the petiole, a node, or they have 2 nodes there. Thus, there are single-node ants and double-node ants, and you often hear them also called one-bump and two-bump ants. Carpenter ants are single-node ants, and that node is quite large and visible from the side. So with just a little magnification with the magnifier that you carry in your pocket, you will see this important characteristic. By noting the single node, you are also relieved to realize that this is not a stinging ant, as most of the double-node ants are. As you can see in the image on the right, at the top you have the carpenter ant with the single node. Below you have the big-headed ant that actually has 2 nodes. And all other single-node ants in the U.S. are not equipped with stingers. They often have developed a means for causing us pain. Many of these larger ants have large jaws, and they can bite. Another important identifying character for carpenter ants is the profile of the thorax. If you inspect it from the side, again with your magnifier, you can see that from the front of the thorax to the back of the thorax, the top outline is a nice, even, rounded line. There are no dips or bumps or spines on it, as you would see with other groups of ants that might be similar. Just a nice, rounded profile that sort of drops off suddenly at the very back. One group of ants that is similar, large, and commonly mistaken for carpenter ants is the field ants, or thatch ants, in the genus Formica. However, these have a distinct valley in the top of the thorax that distinguishes them from Camponotus, and they are not wood-nesting ants. 2 more characters of Camponotus that will tell you for certain that these are what you have are the small fringe of hairs surrounding the anal opening and the 12-segmented antennae that do not end with an enlarged club. To see these 2 characteristics, you definitely will need good magnification, and a hand magnifier of around 20x power would be very useful. Another hint in proper identification is that you need to be looking at the larger workers to see the characters properly. Like all other ants in the world, carpenter ants are social, meaning a queen or queens are present to lay eggs, workers are present to care for the young, forage for food, and create and protect the nest. And all of the daily activities of ants revolves around successful protection and expansion of the colony and its members. Most species of carpenter ants have a single queen responsible for producing the eggs. Some have multiple queens, such as Vicunus, perhaps a reason its colonies may become so much larger than other kinds of carpenter ants. In all species, though, there will be periods when the winged males and females are produced, and these reproductive and fertile adults lay in wait for environmental conditions outside to trigger them to exit the colony, mate, and begin new colonies of their species. A mature colony of carpenter ants spends the winter in diapause, in which activity within the colony is slowed greatly due to the cold weather. Larvae from last summer's eggs spend the winter in the colony along with workers, the winged, alates, and the queen, and with the first warm days of spring the signal is given and the alates leave the colony. The role of males is brief but exciting or frustrating depending on how you look at it, as the males exist for one purpose only, and that is to mate and then die. Those males lucky enough to have mated have thus been able to pass their genetic material onto a new generation of ants. And since many separate colonies will swarm simultaneously in an area, it allows for a mixing of the genetics for better health of the species. From this single mating, the female ant, now to be a queen in her own colony, stores all the sperm from the male in a special sac called the spermatheca, and she diligently withdraws the sperm as needed for fertilization of her own eggs over her entire lifetime. She does not mate again. She now seeks an appropriate location to begin her colony, and what she seeks is moisture. For some species, this may be in wet, dead wood, such as logs on the ground or old stumps buried in the soil. If they find a nice wet area on structural wood, they may actually begin the colony within a structure, thus emphasizing the need to eliminate unwanted moisture problems from structures. As a winged insect, the female is not the world's greatest flyer, so she tends to just sort of go where the wind takes her, and the wind could very easily deposit her on or near a home. If she finds conditions suitable for a new colony right there, then there is no need to keep looking. Moisture is key, and the fertilized new queen finds this place and buries herself within it, hollowing out a small chamber for herself and the offspring to come. Like termites, the female may break off her now useless wings, although this does not always happen. The queen now lays around 50 to 20 eggs in her chamber, and when these hatch to the first larva, the queen feeds them exclusively with regurgitations from her own mouth. Nutrition derived from stored fat within her and from the degrading wing muscles, which will no longer be used. The larvae move through their several instars, each stage of development, and in about 3 weeks they will pupate. However, just prior to moving into the pupa stage, the larva creates a silk cocoon for itself, and pupation occurs within this protective shell. This is one reason why we say it's very hard to kill carpenter ants in that pupal stage. This is another important distinction of carpenter ants. For most species of ants, they do not have cocoons, and once the adult ant emerges from this silk case, the cocoon is no longer useful to the ants, and it will be discarded. You may see these cocoons as evidence of an ant infestation. For carpenter ants go through regular house cleaning, and all the junk and debris within the expanding colony is periodically gathered up and shoved out through holes called windows to land on whatever surface happens to be below that point. It may be the floor, the kitchen counter, a windowsill, or any other horizontal surface. On occasion, pest control technicians find what looks like crumbled up styrofoam accumulations of tiny white particles. Under magnification, though, you can clearly see that these were old silk cocoons of the carpenter ants, perhaps mixed with some sawdust and other ant garbage, and the evidence spoke to an infestation of carpenter ants in that structure. In another 3 weeks or so, the pupa will be mature, and the adult ant will emerge from it, ready to begin its assigned duties within the colony. These intervals of development are highly variable, and the main influencing factor is temperature. The colder the environment, the longer each stage will take to complete. These first new adult workers are small, but they immediately begin foraging for food outside of the small colony, begin enlarging the colony itself, and begin caring for the next eggs and subsequent larvae being produced by the founding mother. They also feed the queen with regurgitations of the food they have collected, and the workers themselves must feed on liquids. Solid foods are given to the larvae, which are capable of chewing and digesting food that is not already liquefied. This process is called trophallaxis. As the colony grows in size, you begin to notice distinctly different sizes of workers within it. Carpenter ants are one group that is strongly polymorphic, meaning many sizes. There will be large workers, majors, medium-sized workers, intermediates, and small workers, minors, and each and every one of them is a sterile female. No male ants participate in the activities of an ant colony other than the mating flight. In anywhere from 3 to 10 years, the carpenter ant colony may contain several thousand workers, and it now is considered a mature colony capable of producing winged reproductives that it can afford to lose to the mating flights. Up to 400 alates are produced from a colony, and the size of the parent colony may not grow in population much after they begin producing the winged forms. Let's talk about the general identification of carpenter ants. A. Physical characteristics. Size. Workers range from 6 to 13 millimeters, with queens reaching up to 18 millimeters. Coloration. Typically black or dark brown, sometimes with a reddish-brown thorax or legs. Morphology. One-node petiole. Large, strong mandibles used for excavation. Smooth, rounded thorax profile, distinguishing them from other ants with uneven thoraxes. Winged reproductives, alates. Differences between males and queens. Male alates, drones. Appearance. Size. Male alates are generally smaller than queen alates. Body structure. Males have a more slender and elongated body compared to queens. Wings. Males have 2 pairs of wings, with the front pair being larger than the hind pair. Their wings are often more transparent and delicate. Antenna. Males have slightly larger antennae than workers, which are also elbowed and segmented. Color. Males are usually dark brown or black, similar to workers. Role. Mating. The primary function of male alates is to mate with virgin queens during nuptial flights. Lifespan. Males have a relatively short lifespan and die shortly after mating. Queen alates. Appearance. Size. Queen alates are significantly larger than male alates and workers. Body structure. Queens have a robust and well-developed body with a larger thorax and gaster. Wings. Like males, queens have 2 pair of wings, but theirs are stronger and more durable. After mating, queens shed their wings. Antenna. Queens have elbowed and segmented antennae, similar to males and workers. Color. Queens can be dark brown, black, or reddish, depending on the species. Role. Mating and colonization. The primary function of queen alates is to mate with males during nuptial flights. After mating, they shed their wings and establish new colonies. Egg laying. Queens are responsible for laying eggs and ensuring the growth and sustainability of the colony. Lifespan. Queens have a much longer lifespan than males, often living for several years while continuously producing offspring. Let's take a look at some of the traits of male alates and queen alates. First, if we look at the size, the males are smaller and the queens are larger. With the body structure, the males are more slender and elongated, the queens are more robust and well developed. With the wings, the males have more transparent and delicate wings, whereas queens have strong, durable, and shed them after mating. With the males, the antenna is longer, elbowed, and segmented. The queen alates have elbowed and segmented antennae. With male alates, the color is dark brown or black. With queen alates, they're dark brown, black, or reddish. With male alates, their role is mating, whereas the queen alates, their role is mating, egg laying, colony founding. Male alates have a lifespan that is short, whereas queen alates have a long lifespan that lasts for several years. In summary, male alates, drones, are smaller, have a slender body, and primarily exist to mate with queens during nuptial flights. They have a short lifespan and die after mating. Queen alates are larger, have a robust body, and play a crucial role in mating, laying eggs, and establishing new colonies. They have a longer lifespan and are vital for the colony's growth and sustainability. Next, we're going to go through a detailed breakdown of external anatomy, including head, thorax, gaster, legs, and antenna. Let's look at the head. Mandibles are going to be strong, tooth-like structures used for cutting and carrying objects, as well as for defense. With the eyes, they have compound eyes that provide a wide field of vision, though not very detailed. Ocelli, simple eyes located on top of the head that detect light intensity. Their antenna is segmented, elbowed appendages used for sensing the environment, detecting chemicals, and communication. They are highly sensitive and essential for navigation and interaction. Now the thorax, mesosoma, prothorax, mesothorax, and metathorax. The thorax is divided into 3 segments. Each segment has a pair of legs attached. Legs. Carpenter ants have 6 legs, each with several segments: coxa, trochanter, femur, tibia, and tarsus. They have claws at the end of their legs, which help them climb and grip surfaces. Wings. In reproductive ants. Winged carpenter ants also have 2 pairs of wings attached to the thorax. The front wings are larger than the hind wings. These wings are used during mating flights, but are shed afterward. Let's talk about the gaster, also known as the abdomen. Petiole, a narrow waist-like structure that connects the thorax to the gaster. Carpenter ants have a single segmented petiole, which distinguishes them from some other ant species. Gaster, the bulbous rear part of the ant's body. It contains vital organs, such as the digestive and reproductive systems. The gaster also has glands that produce pheromones for communication and defense. Stinger, in some species. Although carpenter ants typically lack a functional stinger, they can spray a formic acid as a defense mechanism. Antenna. Segments. Carpenter ant antennae are composed of multiple segments, making them flexible and highly sensitive. They bend at an elbow-like joint. Sensory function. Antennae are covered with sensory receptors that detect chemical signals, pheromones, touch, and vibrations. They play a crucial role in navigation, foraging, and communication within the colony. Let's take a look at the parts of the mosquito body, the key features, and the functions. The first part we're going to talk about is the head. Key features are going to be mandibles, eyes, ocelli, and antenna. The functions are going to be sensing, feeding, defense, and communication. The next part we want to look at is the thorax. This would include the prothorax, the mesothorax, and the metathorax. This would include legs and wings and reproductives. Functions are going to be movement and flight for the reproductives. Our next part is going to be the gaster. Key features are going to be the petiole, digestive and reproductive organs, glands. Functions are going to be digestion, reproduction, and communication. Our final part is going to be the antenna. The key features are going to be segmented, elbowed, sensory receptors. Functions are going to be sensing environment, detecting chemicals. Let's talk about the satellite colonies. When the new queen establishes her new colony, she seeks out a moist environment. This is necessary for the survival of the eggs and the young larvae. She is not so proud as to ignore pre-existing cavities, and in a natural environment she may discover holes in tree trunks leading to a rotted interior, holes leading under loose bark on a fallen log, or an old stump in the soil with a rotting interior. If moisture is present in a structure, she may find very suitable lodging in wall voids, crawl spaces, or other hollow places. This is all she would need to begin a new colony right there in the new structure. Usually, however, carpenter ant colonies that are located in a structure are only satellite colonies, connected to the primary colony outside by the network of trails used by the adult worker ants. As the immature stages of the ants move to the pupa stage, a somewhat drier environment may be desirable, and this may initiate the workers of a colony to begin moving large numbers of the brood into a structure. They still prefer to find dampness, and if they need to excavate the wood themselves, the damp wood is far easier to chew apart than is sound wood. Although dry, sound wood will also be excavated. Within the structure now you may find small numbers of workers, pupa, and some larger larvae, and sometimes the winged reproductives that are just hanging around getting in the way. You will not find small larvae or eggs in satellite colonies, so if these stages are present, it is an indication that this may not be a satellite colony. There may be over a dozen satellite colonies, all connected to and interacting with the parent colony, and if all you do is treat the satellite colony, you still have not resolved the problem. The vast majority of the ants are still outside, happy and untouched, and likely to reinfest the structure. So, even if you find piles of sawdust and other debris as evidence of a carpenter ant nest in a structure, you still need to do a thorough inspection outside to determine if there is a more important source of the ants there. Let's talk about foods and foraging. Carpenter ants are omnivorous, meaning they will feed on a wide variety of materials, although it generally boils down to either protein or carbohydrate. Protein is in animal products and oils, and carbohydrate is from sugars. The colony has different needs at different times, so the search for food may dwell on one or the other of these basic foods for any period of time. In their natural environment, carpenter ants find their protein mainly in the form of other insects. They either catch and kill these insects themselves or act as scavengers, finding dead insects laying around for the taking. This is the reason you will very often find bits of insect parts mixed in with the sawdust that is tossed from the colony on their weekend cleaning parties. The parts that are not digestible become part of the debris in the colony. Carbohydrates are derived from sugar, and an important natural source of this sugar is the sticky drippings produced by the various plant-feeding pest bugs in the order Homoptera, aphids, scales, mealybugs, etc. As these insects suck out the plant fluids, they produce an excess, and the excess is excreted as honeydew, often in vast quantities. The carpenter ants long ago learned of this buffet, and they eagerly seek out the aphids, even encouraging the production of more honeydew by protecting the aphids from other predators or parasites, tickling the aphids with their antennae, and perhaps moving the aphids to a more desirable location. There also can be other sources of sugar for the foraging ants: fallen fruit in a yard, sap from a damaged tree, and of course household items such as jellies, syrup, candy, or other kitchen products. If their food sources are taken away, you are less likely to have the ants hanging around your customer's home or yard. Elimination of the plant pests that may be supporting their nutritional needs and cleaning up interior foods that are available to them will encourage the ants to move somewhere else to be able to find the food necessary for their colony. Sanitation is one valuable step in control. Most carpenter ants are nocturnal, meaning they are really most active at night, whether it is for foraging for food or moving into satellite colonies. These ants also prefer to move along in trails, using the same trail repeatedly as they move back and forth from satellite colony or food source back to the primary colony. These habits tell you a few things when it comes to controlling these ants. Your inspection of the property should be at night, when you're most likely to be able to see the movement of the ants. You should look for trails of ants or the telltale lines where their trails have been. You should consider items they can trail along, such as hoses, wires, pipes, or tree branches, as they prefer to utilize existing objects if it serves their need. Let's talk about the evidence. Your customer might initially notice one of two things that indicate something is wrong. The most obvious sign will be the worker ants themselves, either wandering around inside the home or outside in trails. You might also see them walking up the exterior walls and entering through a hole where wiring or plumbing penetrates. This clearly points to an ant problem, so the next step will be identifying the type of ants. The other thing is a pile of frass. I suggest keeping a good hand magnifier with you to closely inspect the material, improving your chances of making an accurate identification. Since carpenter ants don't eat wood, but instead pick off tiny splinters to enlarge their living cavities, the sawdust you will find will not be small, uniform fecal droppings. Carpenter ant sawdust consists of numerous small bits of wood, varying in size and shape, and it is called frass. This sawdust might be mixed with leftover insect parts, dead ants, empty silk pupa cocoons, or any other material that was in the ants' chambers but not needed, all pushed out of the colony through windows created by the workers. Within their chambers, the ants are meticulous housekeepers. They leave behind a very smooth surface as they scrape at the wood with their jaws, unlike the velvety look created by damp wood termites. Their galleries are cleared of all excess material, unlike beetle galleries. The galleries themselves tend to be haphazard and wandering, sometimes forming large chambers across the wood grain. Let's take a look at the damage caused. This damage can be extensive, especially in areas of the United States where carpenter ant pressure is high, such as the Pacific Northwest. Carpenter ants play a crucial role in recycling dead trees into usable sawdust. However, they don't differentiate between a log in the forest and a log in a home. Carpenter ants have also adapted to excavating newer building materials, like foam insulation and foam core panels. Since they don't eat these materials, they don't care about how palatable they are. All that matters to them is that it's easy to create a cavity inside these softer materials, so why struggle with Douglas fir? The debris from excavating these materials will obviously be tiny pieces of these materials, not sawdust. Carpenter ants excavate galleries to rear their young. They prefer moist but not wet, deteriorating wood that may be found in existing cavities or void areas in structures. Nests are commonly found in porch pillars, roofs, window sills, and structural wood in contact with soil. Workers cut galleries in the wood, often extending into adjacent sound wood, expanding the nest size for the enlarging colony. Galleries are irregular, usually excavated with the wood grain. The walls are smooth and clean with shredded wood fragments, frass, deposited outside of the nest. The clean galleries of carpenter ants are easily distinguished from mud-lined galleries created by termites. At present time, termites are not known to exist in Alaska. All kinds of houses, from the newest to the oldest, may become infested. In cities, carpenter ants are usually found in wooded areas, but may also be found in crowded residential districts as well. Let's look at some guidelines for reducing infestations and damage. Prevention is the best control method. Measures to prevent structural timbers from becoming wet may protect a house from infestation. Building sites and adjacent areas should be cleared of stumps and partially decayed logs. If possible, buildings should be positioned on concrete or masonry foundations or on treated timbers. Lumber, firewood, and debris should not be stored next to the house or in basements and crawl spaces. Wood that is stored in or near the house should be kept dry and, If possible, elevated to allow air circulation. Food, including pet food, should be kept in sealed containers. Now comes the inspection. So, you got the call. You arrived and were handed some sawdust or ants in a Ziploc bag and determined that it is carpenter ants that you are dealing with. Now, how do you go about eliminating them? It is very important to be able to locate all of the nest inside and outside of this structure so that each one can be treated as needed. We're going to need to interview the customer. They may already know a lot of things about the problem that would be helpful to you. For example, where have the ants been seen and where are they most prevalent? Have you seen them outdoors and where? Do you know if any moisture problems exist within the structure or have in the past? Where have you found any sawdust-looking debris? Have you seen any of the winged ants? You could even talk to any children living there. Kids and bugs seem to go together, and they may very well have been watching the ant trails without the parents knowing it. Moisture problems are a big issue, and ants nesting indoors usually will do so around moisture. You should always use a moisture meter for this. There are electronic moisture meters capable of sensing through stucco, linoleum, tile, or other wall coverings. I believe there's some important tools for your inspection. You can use things like binoculars, fiber optic scopes, aspirators, and I like the Thermotrac eye tracker. You're also going to want to use tools such as a hand magnifier, inspection mirror, moisture meter, a good sturdy ladder, and a multi-tool. I would include a good flashlight and a set of knee pads as essential tools for your inspection. Remember, you're going to be looking in areas that are not going to be well lit. You're going to need a flashlight to light up these areas, and knee pads are great, whether you're crawling in a crawl space under a house or even in an attic. You'll understand after you do this a few times, it's a great way to protect your knees. Some of the important places to check would be around plumbing, around gutter drains, poorly fitting siding outside, deteriorating areas of roofs, window framing, or basements and crawl spaces. Of particular concern would be any place wood may contact the soil, such as decks, porch columns or supports, and exterior stairs. On structures that don't have gutters, observe how far the roof overhangs the exterior walls. If it is a shallow overhang, there is more of an opportunity for rainwater to splash back onto the siding versus a 3 to 4 foot overhang. Keeping in mind that carpenter ants love to trail along existing lines and may enter structures on these lines. Look for shrubs or tree branches touching the structure and recommend these be trimmed away. Inspect wires coming into the home and observe any ant activity. If ants are found within the structure, there is a high probability that they are moving from place to place within wall voids using the electrical wires as hidden roads. Given the size of carpenter ants, it is also possible to hear them working within their hollow cavities. What may be noticed is a sort of dry rustling sound created with the mandibles as some sort of a communication method between the ants. If they become disturbed or agitated, the sound intensifies. At times it is possible to hear this sound simply by standing near the walls, but usually the use of a listening device such as the stethoscope or the eye tracker will make it easier to detect. Tapping on the wood at various locations may also reveal carpenter ant chambers by the hollow sound the wood might make where chambers are present. An inspection should also include an evaluation of the surrounding property and just how inviting a place it has become for the ants. If the customer has piles of firewood near the structure, these should be moved further away. Old logs, hollow stumps, piles of yard debris, or living trees with hollow interiors all make great nesting sites for carpenter ants. Landscape timbers and other wooden materials used in the landscape also become susceptible if they are not treated in some way, such as pressure treating. Bear in mind, there is wood that is purely fungus damaged and has no correlation to carpenter ant infestations. And the opposite is true, that carpenter ants do infest solid wood that has no evidence of fungus decay or excessive moisture. Let's look at control and some general methods of control. Once you have established where all ants' colonies are located, including the most important one, the parent colony, most likely found outdoors, you can set about on a control program. We have already touched on some of the aspects of carpenter ant control in your integrated management approach, and that is the manipulation of the attractions present, sugar sources, trailing surfaces, and openings to the structure and nesting sites outdoors. Things are changing quickly. The days of ant control as a simple process of dumping a chemical into your tank, spraying 100 gallons of it around the yard, and calling it a day are no longer realistic. Maybe they never were. Ant control is no more of a one-step process than is fly control around a restaurant. Making conditions discouraging. Once you have done all that is possible to change conditions around the property so that ants are not encouraged, you can then look at the chemical applications that may be needed. We can probably place the use of pesticides into 4 categories. These are baiting, spraying, dusting, and granulating. Each has their own benefits in a control program. Managing carpenter ants with baits. Boric acid baits that have low concentration, less than 1% of the active ingredient, are formulated in a sweet liquid, are slow-acting, and non-repellent. First, attract ants to a non-toxic food like a sugar milk solution or sliced crickets. Once ants feed from this food source, replace with several different toxic baits that are labeled for carpenter ant control and let them choose. Place baits outdoors first to reduce the population. Then, if necessary, introduce indoor baiting. Be aware it may attract more ants into the home. Place baits in protected locations. Place baits in protected locations inaccessible to children and pets. Ants will be attracted to the bait and take it back to the nest, where the entire colony, including queens, may be killed. Bait must be slow-acting so workers won't be killed before they get back to the nest. Results may not be evident for several weeks, but a reduction is normally evident in a few days. Killing workers does little to control the colony because as few as 1% and not more than 10% of a colony's foraging worker ants are able to provide sufficient food to support nest-bound queens and larvae. When using ant baits for any species of ant for that matter, do not rely on one brand or one matrix all the time. Ants are finicky eaters, and their dietary needs change throughout the year. Other products for carpenter ants. Remember, pesticides can be injurious to humans, domestic animals, desirable plants, and fish or other wildlife if they are not handled or applied properly. Use all pesticides selectively and carefully. Since approved uses of a pesticide may change frequently, it is important to check the label for current approved and legal use. Follow recommended practices for the disposal of surplus pesticides in pesticide containers. Carpenter ants are highly attracted to piles of bait material rather than a broadcast application. If they ignore the granular bait, then try a liquid or gel bait, or a different brand of bait or both. Baiting works very well, but it can be erratic. Also, please give strong consideration to the use of bait stations. Another benefit of placing ant baits in bait stations is that they are then protected from the degrading effects of sunlight and rain or sprinkler water. The use of dust formulations also is a highly effective method of ant control. If you have actually found the opening that leads to the parent colony or into satellite colonies, you can apply the dust directly into these sites. If necessary, the use of some type of power duster to forcibly push the dust into the colony will be more effective than placing it only near the opening. Dust can be introduced at the electrical switch plates as shown here. Dust should be introduced where the plumbing enters the wall. These images show how the wiring and plumbing run through the wall cavities. This is the pathway carpenter ants use to remain hidden while moving through the structure. Dust has several advantages. First is a cost savings. Second, less environmental contamination is caused with low use of chemicals. Third, the ants are more likely to contact the dusted surfaces. However, too much dust becomes a repellent and the ants will avoid it. Once plumbing and electrical voids have been treated, the gaps around them should be sealed to prevent future entry. Also, seal any other gaps, cracks, or openings. This is a great part of an IPM program. This image gives you an idea of the wall foaming process and what the foam looks like in a cutaway view of the inside of the wall. A boron foam application will penetrate the wood, leaving an insecticide both on and in the wood. As the foam dissipates, the liquid will penetrate the cellular structure of the wood, leaving the boron, which acts as a stomach toxicant to carpenter ants. Two additional products that work well are Premise foam and Termidor foam. These are both non-repellents and can work great in areas where you suspect carpenter ant nesting or activity in wall voids. Premise 2 and Termidor SC and Phantom are non-repellent and will achieve a kill using a low dosage. Granular baits can also be used to reduce the ant population and insects they feed on. These can be used for a band application around the exterior perimeter of the structure. The formulations that are microencapsulated and non-repellent are excellent for ant control, and there are a number of them now. The microencapsulation reduces the repellency, lengthens the residual activity of the active ingredient, and enhances the ability of a passing ant to contact the material as the microscopic capsules stick to their cuticle. The spray should be applied both inside and outside the foundation, if possible, should extend up the wall for about a foot, as well as out onto the soil about 12 inches. With this in mind, though, you must carefully read the full product label for the product you have chosen to ensure it allows you to make an application in this manner and on the site you have chosen. In particular, any place you have found ant trails entering the structure should be treated, allowing the ants to contact the fresh material and hopefully carry it into the colony with them. The lower edges of exterior siding are particularly critical sites. A hand-carried or backpack sprayer is more appropriate for this than a power sprayer, not only because less pesticide enters the environment, but also because you can more precisely place the material into the openings where it needs to be to contact the ants. Treatment of the areas around the outdoor nest and any nest openings you can find also will help control these ants. Having discussed spraying, I recommend holding off on any spray treatments until after baiting. Even though baiting takes some time to achieve control, the ants will carry the bait back to the colony and into areas you may not be able to access. Plus, if enough bait is provided, it will most likely achieve a complete colony collapse. Baiting takes patience, but the end result will please everyone involved. Remember what was said earlier. Don't broadcast the bait. Make small piles of bait along the trails and near entry points. Do not spray over, around, or on any bait or dust applications. 1, 2, 3. Spray dust bait. If you must spray, do it first. After spraying dust, after dusting bait. Why? Because contaminated bait can lose its attractiveness. It could kill the foragers before they return to the colony. Don't apply bait where you have sprayed. Now, for the specifics. The current chart you're seeing is for carpenter ant species in Alaska, their habitat preferences and human interactions. I need you to take a few moments to read about the species, their natural habitats, their structural habits, their risk to structures, and their control focus. I'm going to give you a few moments to review this chart. Let's look at the Camponotus herculeanus, or the Hercules ant. It is the most cold-tolerant ant species known, surviving to below negative 40 degrees Celsius. Negative 40 degrees Celsius is equal to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Interestingly, this is the point where the Celsius and Fahrenheit scales intersect. So, it doesn't matter which scale you use, negative 40 is just really, really cold. This is the Camponotus herculeanus carpenter ant. Take a few moments to review this slide. Identification and physical characteristics. Size, workers, 6 to 13 millimeters, queens up to 18 millimeters. Color, dark brown to black. One node petiole, differentiates from field ants. Physical features, smooth, rounded thorax profile, contrasts with other ants like Formica spp. Strong mandibles for excavating wood. Winged reproductives during nuptial flights. Habitat preferences, natural environments. Prefers cool, moist forest. Nests primarily in decayed, damp wood such as fallen logs, tree stumps, and rotting wood debris. Often found in old-growth forest and wooded areas with ample moisture. Structural habitats. Commonly invades homes and buildings, particularly in areas with moisture issues. Builds nests in wall voids, insulation, structural beams, and water-damaged wood. Often found near plumbing leaks, basements, crawl spaces, and attics. Interactions with human environments. Structural damage. Excavates wood to create galleries, weakening wood structures over time. Can cause costly damage if infestations go unnoticed. Signs of infestation. Presence of frass, wood shavings near wooden structures, rustling sounds within the walls during the night, winged reproductives indoors during spring swarms. Management strategies. Repair leaks and eliminate excess moisture. Replace damaged wood and seal entry points. Use insecticidal baits and direct nest treatments. Inspection. Look for frass, rustling sounds, and ant trails. Focus on moist areas, basements, bathrooms, kitchens, and attics. Baiting techniques. Protein-based baits. Effective during the spring and early summer. Carbohydrate-based baits. Preferred when ants are feeding on honeydew or sugary substances. Gel baits. Can be applied directly into wall voids and cracks. Chemical treatments. Insecticidal dust. Apply into wall voids, attics, and under baseboards. Examples: boron dust, disodium. Boron dust, disodium, octaborate, tetrahydrate, boric acid. Liquid residual insecticides. Create a barrier around entry points and nesting sites. Examples would be pyrethroids, e.g. bifenthrin, deltamethrin. Moisture management. fix plumbing leaks, improve ventilation, and use dehumidifiers in damp areas. Replace water-damaged wood to eliminate nesting opportunities. Let's take a look at our next carpenter ant, Camponotus modoc. Camponotus modoc. Identification and physical characteristics. Size. Worker ants generally range from 5 to 13 millimeters in length. Queens are larger and can be over 13 millimeters long. Color. Camponotus modoc has a bicolor appearance with a reddish to brown thorax and a darker black gaster, the back part of the ant's body. Their color and size vary slightly depending on the caste, worker, queen, or male. Physical features. Similar to other carpenter ants, they have strong mandibles for excavating wood. They have a smooth, rounded thorax when viewed from the side, and exhibit the typical carpenter ant body shape with a distinct petiole between the thorax and gaster. Please take a moment to review the image of the Camponotus modoc. Habitat preferences. Natural environments. Found in forested areas, particularly in moist, decayed wood close to the ground. Prefers wood in contact with the soil such as logs, wooden fences, and garden mulch. Structural habits. Commonly nest in damp wooden structures like decks, porches, and basements. Can invade untreated wood and structures with poor drainage. Establishes satellite nest in drier areas of homes while maintaining primary nest in damp wood. Actions with human environments. Structural risk. Capable of causing significant damage by creating large, interconnected galleries in wood. More aggressive in defending nest, which can make treatment difficult. Like other carpenter ants, C. modoc excavates wood to create smooth, clean galleries. The nest may consist of multiple chambers that extend deep into the wood, often hidden from sight. Behavior. Diet. They feed on a variety of foods, including sugary substances like honeydew from aphids, and proteins, insects, other arthropods, and meat scraps. They are omnivores and opportunistic feeders, scavenging food when available. Colony structure. C. modoc colonies have a queen, workers, and males. The workers take on a variety of tasks, such as foraging, defending the nest, caring for the brood, and expanding the galleries. The queen's primary role is to lay eggs. Swarming. During late spring and early summer, C. modoc produces winged reproductive ants, males and new queens, that participate in nuptial flights to mate and establish new colonies. Similarities and differences to other carpenter ant species. Similarities. Like most carpenter ants, C. modoc creates galleries in wood and feeds on a variety of foods, with a preference for sugary substances. Their colony structure is also similar to other species in the Camponotus genus. Differences. C. modoc tends to be more commonly found in moist, decaying wood, in both natural environments, like forests, and in human structures. It may also have slightly different behavioral traits, especially in its preference for wetter environments compared to other carpenter ant species. Prevention and control. Improve drainage around structures and avoid wood-to-soil contact. Regularly inspect wood exposed to moisture, such as decks and porches. Utilize perimeter treatments and targeted baiting techniques. Let's take a look at the Camponotus ficinus. Camponotus ficinus, commonly known as the western carpenter ant, is a species of carpenter ant native to North America, particularly in the western regions. Identification and physical characteristics. Size. Worker ants typically range from 5 to 15 millimeters in length, with the queens being larger. Color. Workers are usually reddish-brown to black with a distinctive shiny black appearance. The head, thorax, and gaster may be darker compared to the rest of the body. Physical features. They have large, well-developed mandibles used for cutting wood to create their nest. The thorax is evenly rounded when viewed from the side, and they exhibit the typical carpenter ant shape. Take a few moments to review the image of Camponotus vicinus. Habitat preferences. Natural environments. Versatile habitat range, thriving in both moist and dry conditions. Prefers dry, decayed wood, tree hollows, and under rocks. Often found in temperate coastal forest and shrublands. Structural habitats. Known for adaptability to man-made structures. Builds nests in wall voids, attics, and behind siding. Often nests near heat sources or in warm areas of structures. Interactions with human environments. Colony behavior. Establishes multiple satellite nests within structures. Can spread throughout a building, making control more challenging. Management approaches. Eliminate food sources like crumbs and sugary residues. Seal cracks and entry points, particularly around windows and doors. Monitor and treat both primary and satellite nests to ensure colony elimination. Camponotus lasius. See Lasis saline. Camponotus lasius, also referenced as Camponotus lasaline, identification and physical characteristics. Size. Worker ants typically range in size, but are generally small to medium compared to other Camponotus species. Color. They typically exhibit a dark coloration, often black or dark brown. Physical features. They share the general Camponotus body structure with a rounded thorax and a noticeable gaster. Detailed features may vary slightly, and precise identification sometimes requires microscopic examination. Take a few moments to review Camponotus lasis saline. Habitat preferences. Natural environments. Prefers soil, leaf litter, and decaying wood. Primarily outdoor species, so focus on soil, leaf litter, and ground nest. Commonly found under rocks, logs, and in forest litter. Builds shallow nests in the ground which are often hidden by natural debris. Structural habitats. Less likely to invade homes compared to other carpenter ant species. May occasionally enter buildings in search of food, especially during the spring and summer. Typically nest outdoors, but can forage indoors if conditions are favorable. Interactions with human environments. Impact on structures. Minimal risk of structural damage, as they rarely establish nests within buildings. Known to attract aphids to garden plants, potentially causing indirect harm to landscaping. Management approaches. Control outdoor aphid populations to reduce food sources. Maintain cleanliness to avoid attracting foraging ants indoors. Treat outdoor nests with appropriate insecticides if necessary. Let's look at some additional tips for all species. 1. Non-chemical control methods. One of these would be physical removal, vacuuming visible ants and cleaning surfaces to remove pheromone trails. Another option would be heat and cold treatments. Extreme temperatures can be used in isolated cases to eliminate nest. 2. Natural and green products. Boron-based dust are safe for indoor use and effective in wall voids and crevices. Or we could look at essential oils. Peppermint, tea tree, and citrus oils can repel ants. 3. Monitoring and follow-up. Regularly check bait stations and reapply treatments as needed. Monitor for new ant activity, particularly during spring and summer months. Vacuuming can reduce pest infestations instantly and fits in with most IPM programs. Using a vacuum for professional pest control in residential settings offers several benefits, making it an effective component of integrated pest management or IPM. Here are some of the key advantages. 1. Immediate removal. Quick action. Vacuums provide instant removal of visible carpenter ants. Secondly, egg removal. They can effectively remove ant eggs, larvae, pupa, and adults, reducing future infestations. You should know how to identify carpenter ants through physical characteristics and behavior, understand their ecology, life cycle, nesting habits, and foraging patterns, and assess the impact of infestations on structures. You should also be able to differentiate between parent and satellite colonies, identify signs of infestation, and evaluate potential structural damage. You have learned to develop effective control and management strategies, considering seasonal behaviors and environmental factors specific to Alaska. When treating for carpenter ants, you are protecting someone's investment, but you must also be cognizant of protecting our environment. Limit spraying to specific areas of activity, keeping in mind drift, runoff, and other off-target areas. Do not allow dust to contaminate non-target surfaces, indoors or out. Keep ant bait out of the reach of children, pets, and non-target animals. The use of trade names in this publication is solely for the purpose of providing specific information or as examples. American Pest CEUs does not guarantee or warranty the products named, and references to them in this publication do not signify our approval to the exclusion of other products of suitable composition. All chemicals should be used in accordance with directions on the manufacturer's label. Use pesticides safely. Read and follow directions on the manufacturer's label. We would like to thank all photographers for the use of their images. Please take a few moments to review the people that helped make this course great. Congratulations, you have completed the course. Please proceed to the exam to receive your credit.